The last thing was kind of doing the guidelines, which was interesting. And that, in my mind, was almost like, it was almost like Trump getting the country back from the doctors.
227,000 Americans are dead. And we can see very clearly why in this audio obtained by CNN from Bob Woodward, in which Jared Kushner shows that the White House had a directly adversarial relationship with doctors in their response to COVID-19. Take a listen in.
New insights now from the president's son-in-law in his own voice about the early days of the coronavirus pandemic and the election year tensions between the president and the doctors warning him about the COVID threat. Jared Kushner talked to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Bob Woodward back in April with the president's blessing. Remember, little context here. The early White House task force guidelines to slow the spread, those were issued in mid-March. 1 month later, the White House issued reopening guidelines as the president grew anxious that coronavirus restrictions were hurting the economy and his re-election chances. Listen here to Kushner describe this critical moment.
The last thing was kind of doing the guidelines, which was interesting. And that, in my mind, was almost like, it was almost like Trump getting the country back from the doctors, right? In the sense that what he now did was, he's going to own the open up. There were three phases. There was the panic phase, the pain phase, and then the comeback phase. That doesn't mean there's not still a lot of pain, and there won't be pain for a while. But that basically was, we've now put out rules to get back to work. Trump's now back in charge. It's not the doctors. They've kind of, we have like a negotiated settlement.
Now, it should be crystal clear that the results of what Jared Kushner said is directly linked to 220,000 people being dead. 227,000 people being dead. Listen to this analysis from the correspondent at CNN who obtained the audio.
They wanted to sideline the doctors. Simple and clear. They saw the doctors as adversaries. When you say negotiated settlement, it sounds more like the end of a war. And John, it just underscores the Trump-Kushner political strategy. They had one concern, Election Day. Once again, as Woodward showed throughout the book, a failure of leadership, a betrayal of trust. And as we see the numbers surging again, it's going on today.
They had one concern, and that was Election Day. And we see that in full force. And because they ignored the doctors, not only did they ignore the doctors, Jared Kushner saw the doctors as an adversary. And because they had an adversarial relationship with doctors, they led the country to 227,000 deaths. One report said that at least 130 to 210,000 of those deaths did not have to occur. How are we in this place where a man who can preside over so much death and be responsible, directly responsible for this level of death, could still be in position to be the president of the United States for 4 more years?
And in this audio, Jamie, give us some context here. We know Jared Kushner is incredibly close to the president, if not his most trusted advisor in the White House, and they've had a lot of turmoil on the staff there, and he has some very harsh words for many of his former colleagues.
Look, for the past 4 years, this is not a surprise. We have seen Trump call people names. We have seen him blame the top people around him. Kushner, in this audio, echoes those sentiments, but listen carefully to how he describes the people who are now at the White House.
The most dangerous people around the president are overconfident idiots, right? Because that has a way sometimes of getting past his defense mechanism, because if you're overconfident, then sometimes, on a topic where he doesn't have other people around to kind of validate it, then he can sometimes say, okay, let's go with that. So that's kind of, I think if you look at the evolution over time, we've gotten rid of a lot of the overconfident idiots, and now we've got a lot more thoughtful people who kind of know their place and know what to do.
Jared Kushner literally has zero self-awareness. His entire existence is based on the fact that he's an overconfident idiot. But let's see what CNN had to say about this.
John, I just want to emphasize those words, know their place. It's clear that whether it's administration officials or doctors, health experts, no surprise, Trump wants to be the one who's in charge.
I want you to observe something else in this clip. Jared Kushner speaks to a journalist, an investigative journalist, with the confidence as if what he's saying is proper. What he's saying to us, we can clearly see is sociopathic. And it led to the deaths of 227,000 people. But for people like Jared Kushner, who in the same clip laughed at the overconfident idiots in the White House, he himself has demonstrated himself to be an overconfident idiot because he says these things to an investigative journalist as if it's something to be lauded and approved of. So not only does it point out the abject ignorance and overconfidence of the idiot Jared Kushner, but it also shows you the extent to which these people believe that what they're doing is the right thing. They are so confident that they are doing the right thing that something that we all see as an egregious crime against humanity for which they should be tried and found guilty, they feel confident enough about it to brag about it to an investigative journalist. That should help you understand the scale and the scope of their sociopathy. They are literally bragging about the very things that led to the deaths of 227,000 people. So if this is the type of thing that they brag about to investigative journalists, think about what they're not bragging about. Think about what they're hiding, which is probably far more egregious than we can even imagine.